All right, good evening, everybody. Okay, my name is Hardy Rao, also known as the bad boy of accounting. It's true, I am an accountant, actually. And, I don't know, how many here only get things done when they're not supposed to be doing that thing? I spend all day at work writing jokes. And then an hour before I come here, I'm supposed to be working on my set. I'm like, I wonder what fourth quarter earnings are going to be like. Circle K is going to start selling weed. You guys know that?
Yes.
I just read this like 30 minutes ago. Circle K is going to start selling weed next year, which is kind of, I don't know, because I'll tell you guys a secret, okay? In 1995, I sold a little bit of weed. And because of that, I cannot get approved for TSA pre-check. I can go to the airport and wait 2 hours to get through security, ride on some shitty flight that's way too packed, land in a place, overpay for a rental car, fill it up with gas that's $5 a gallon, and at a final kick in the balls, I could buy some weed. All right, new material night. What are you going to do? Trying to better myself, I gave up meat and dairy in March of 2020, which is the best time to be giving up simple pleasures in life. I haven't had a decent meal in almost 3 years. This is actually a pretty significant change for me because I used to make my own beef jerky. This is true. I didn't hunt the animal, but, I went to a butcher shop and paid a guy, like a man. I did. But I don't, it's a vegan diet, but I don't call myself a vegan because, I don't know, it's just very polarizing, because you have extremists on either side. On the one hand, you've got these non-vegan extremists, and they want to point out like every single little thing that you might do that might involve an animal product. Like I talked to this guy the other day, and I told him that I don't use animal products. He's like, "Oh, did you drive here?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "You know that material that enhances the strength and flexibility of the rubber on your tires? That's animal fat, you fucking hypocrite." I'm like, okay, geez, you win. But on the other hand, you got these vegans, and they're never happy. You're like, a nice day outside, and they're like, not for the chickens. Been thinking a lot about my purpose in life lately. I think I'm pretty ripe for a cult. If anybody's recruiting. My LinkedIn status is open to new opportunities. I have been experiencing a lot of anxiety. I've been trying to read more about mindfulness. Have you guys ever read the book The Power of Now?
Yep.
By Eckhart Tolle? By round of applause. I heard a couple of you. All right. Well, basically, if you haven't read that book, it's basically about not dwelling on the past or fearing about the future, but living in the present. That's the power of now. But the thing is, my anxiety is so high, it's like I close my eyes, I try to meditate to channel the power of now, and I'm like, is it happening now? How about now? Boy. I read about this article about Steve Jobs. You guys know who Steve Jobs is, obviously.
Who's that?
Anybody want to tell this guy who Steve Jobs is?
Founder of Microsoft.
Well, excuse me. So I was reading this article about Steve Jobs and his final words on his deathbed. And he was basically talking about how important, time and, how important it is to live your life to the fullest. And he was basically saying that, money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy the things that are really important. And he gave some examples, and he was like, you could buy a watch for $3,000 or $300,000, and it's going to tell the same time. You can buy a car for $100,000 or $1 million, and it'll get you to the same destination. And it really made me realize, the importance of non-monetary things like time with your friends and family. And it also made me realize, how filthy fucking rich was this guy? $3,000 is the minimum for his watch purchase? $100,000 rock bottom car price for this guy? Really made me think about life and how much mine sucks compared to this guy. I'm over here in a 98 Camry. He's on his deathbed going, I realize now I never needed a private jet to get to my life's destination. First class would have sufficed. Jesus. Can I tell you, I'm pretty happy. I had some pretty good elevator banter recently. I live on the 11th floor of a 12-story building. Parking garage is on the fourth floor. Okay, there's 2 elevators. And what you have to know about this is one of the elevators wasn't working. So I get on the 4th floor to go up, and a guy gets on with me, and we start to go up, and he's like, oh man, I meant to be going down. And I was like,
oh yeah.
Well, there's only one elevator working, so consider this the scenic route. Okay, come on. I mean, maybe it's not Zanies material, but if you were stuck in an elevator with me, that'd be gold. And I felt really redeemed from the last time that I tried elevator banter. It didn't go quite so well. Let me give you a little bit of background. This was in 2010. I just moved to Chicago after having gotten divorced. It was a really rough time. And my first day in the city at my new place, I stepped out into the street and I was like, this is the first day of the rest of my life, and a bird shit on my head. This is a true story. So I was like, okay, I had a lot of anxiety. I was like, okay, I need to get out there and meet some people, How do I do this? So I picked up some books like How to Win Friends and Influence People. I started looking online, and one thing I found out was that in order to strike up a conversation, the advice I found online was always have an interesting factoid in your back pocket. What famous person in history was born on this day? So I did some research, and I got into the elevator at 6 p.m. rush hour time. I was waiting all day for that. I didn't have a job or anything. I was researching this shit. So I got on the elevator. It's crowded. It's quiet. The doors closed, and I said, well, it's John Cusack's birthday today. That's how everybody responded. Nobody said a goddamn thing, and the tension was so thick until finally somebody got out on the 8th floor and they said, well, that was unnecessary, and they just left me in the elevator with that. But I'll leave you guys with this. An inspirational story, okay? Because everybody here, you have your own dreams. We're all following our dreams, and we're trying to make it. And, achieving success in your dreams, it takes a lot of ambition, a lot of determination, a lot of motivation. Maybe, I'm trying to do comedy. Maybe you've heard of a little-known comic named Jim Carrey, perhaps? Well, when he was first starting out, he had nothing. He was broke. He wrote himself a check for $10 million to cash in the future. I was very inspired by this, so I thought I'd do a similar thing. So I wrote myself a check for $250,000. I wrote a check out of my grandparents' checkbook. It's their entire life savings. It's all they have left. And I gotta tell you, if I don't catch a break soon, I sure hope they have a lot of ambition, determination, and motivation. All right, thank you guys very much.